Welcome to the Wenatchee Valley Museum and Cultural Center's 21st season of the Environmental Film and Speaker Series. It is my honor to share a land acknowledgement. The Wenatchee Valley Museum and Cultural Center is located on the traditional homelands of the Piscosa, or Wenatchee. We acknowledge the traditional lands and offer respect and gratitude to the Piscosa and to the diverse Indigenous peoples that reside in North Central Washington today. Good evening, I am Kimbrus Bond, and on behalf of the museum, I am so pleased to offer this evening's showing of Expedition Reclamation, sponsored by Chelan Douglas Land Trust. Before we begin the presentation, I'd like to let you know that the Environmental Film and Speaker Series exists to provide stimulating educational opportunities to encourage conversation and consideration of various topics that affect our environment on many levels. The Environmental Film and Speaker Series presentations are on the first Thursdays of the month. And in April, we did change our plans and we will be fully virtual again instead of hybrid. It will be a wonderful evening learning about the lives of North American owls with Paul Bannock. And Paul will let us know how we can purchase his book. We were hoping to have a book signing, but that will have to be taken care of elsewhere. But I'm excited for that event. And then in May, we will complete the season with The Winter's Tale. Randy Lewis and guests will share about the lands we reside on through film, storytelling, music, and geology. If you'd like to sponsor an event or recommend a movie, please be sure to reach out to me. You can give me a call at the museum, send me an email, or put it in the chat. A few comments about tonight's call. The webinar that we are using to share, we will be sharing to hear the, if you have questions or you have comments that you would like to make, we would ask that you direct the questions to the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. And if you have tech issues or other things you want us to know more of the dialogue, you can do that in the chat. Donations for tonight's program are going to Indigenous Roots and Reparations Foundation, or IRF. And the link will be shared throughout tonight's call in the chat. So if you haven't made a donation during your registration and you wish to do that, you can follow that link and find out more about it on the website. At this time, I would like to introduce Angela Morris from Chelan Douglas Land Trust, who represents tonight's generous sponsor. And Angela, you can come on screen. We'll make sure to get you unmuted there. Thank you so much for working with me to make tonight possible. And I would know you would like to say a few words.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks so much, Kimbrus. Well, we are just delighted to be a part of this environmental film series, and especially this important film. The Chelan Douglas Land Trust is dedicated to caring for and protecting our natural areas for future generations. And really a critical part of this conservation work is all the connections we make in the community, and that means everybody in the community. So it's exciting to view this really inspiring film that helps move the conversation forward regarding the importance of natural and public lands becoming much more welcoming and accessible for everyone. So we are just really delighted to be here with you and support this film.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Angela. So tonight I welcome the amazing team from Brave Space Media to share about the Expedition Reclamation project. I'm thrilled that this online premiere came together over many months, and it is such an honor to have it all for you tonight. The Brave Space project is a multiracial, women-led, radically collaborative creative team seeking to decolonize outdoor culture, both in front of and behind the lens. Championing traditionally unrepresented voices, their work seeks to amplify character-driven stories that heal our human relationships to each other and to our planet, with a focus on socio-ecological justice, ancestral knowledge, regeneration, and compassionate living. Erin Joy Nash is one of the co-directors of Expedition Reclamation, and she will introduce her team and say a little more about the project. Welcome, Erin, and the whole team.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for having us. So I'm Erin Joy Nash. I'm a visual storyteller and one of the 3 co-directors on Expedition Reclamation. So Sanjana Sekhar, Chelsea Murphy are also here today, both co-directors. as well as our project intern and co-producer Rebecca Graham, and several of our characters. All of them will introduce themselves after the film during a panel. So I grew up in Plain, Washington, in the Wenatchee Valley on Pasquosa, Wenatchee homelands. 6 of our characters in this film call the Pasquosa homelands their current home. Mary Big Bull Lewis is Pasquosa, Wenatchee, and then 6 of the women are from the greater Washington area, Seattle and Bellingham and beyond. Here in the Wenatchee Valley, this landscape, these creeks, mountains, flora and fauna, they've really truly shaped me into the person and the storyteller that I am today. For many of us on the Brave Space Project, we're connected to the Pasquosa Wenatchee territory by a deep sense of home and a calling for stewardship. Both those of us who are Indigenous to this land and those of us who are settlers on this land. So it's for all of those reasons that I'm beyond excited and very emotional that we get to share this labor of love, Expedition Reclamation, with all of you today in partnership with Wenatchee Valley Museum and Chelan Douglas Land Trust, both of who are passionate about the stewardship of this land. And as mentioned, donations tonight are going towards the Land Back initiative spearheaded by the Indigenous Roots and Reparations Foundation here in Wenatchee. The Wenatchee tribe, Pasquosa, lost their promised land during the 1855 treaty due to the government not honoring this agreement. This homeland stretches all the way from what we know as Wenatchee, Washington, all the way through Leavenworth and Lake Wenatchee. Today, there are about 300 Wenatchee tribal members. The goal of the Indigenous Roots and Reparations Foundation is to amplify Indigenous voices and create a safe space in the Wenatchee Valley for all Indigenous people to gather. So they are fundraising to purchase land and also seeking generous landowners to donate land. So if you're a generous landowner, you know where to go. If Sanj, you could share that link in the chat again so that people have that. So this directing of funds, this Land Back initiative, it's a continuation of something that we implemented into our filmmaking process. A big part of Brave Space Media, the Brave Space Project, is reimagining and dreaming about what it looks like to decolonize the storytelling and the filmmaking process. So we implemented this Land Back location fee. A location fee is really common in the filmmaking sphere when you rent a space to shoot your production. And so we dreamed up this idea that we would love to see adopted into the documentary film world of directing a portion of production budgets to Indigenous-led Land Back initiatives or other Indigenous organizations where the filming happens. One of my partners in dreaming about a better world and a better storytelling community is Chelsea Murphy, who will be running the panel after the film. She and I started dreaming about this project, I think in late 2019 or early 2020. And I just remember sitting on her porch, dreaming about and imagining what this film could look like. We figured we'd put a call out on her Instagram for characters and we might get 5 or 6 participants. But she put the call out and 55 Black, Indigenous, and women of color responded. And it quickly became clear to us that reclaiming belonging in outdoor recreation for Black, Indigenous, and women of color and redefining what it means to be outdoorsy was a movement. And there was an entire community of women who had a deep desire to connect with others who had the same lived experiences and a deep desire to reclaim the power of their roots in outdoor culture. This film, Expedition Reclamation, is the byproduct of that community and that movement. It's a collective call to action, an art piece that is a reflection of this greater movement. It's a glimpse into a community that has been forming for the better part of the last 2 years. So I invite you to open your hearts and your minds as you listen to the tapestry of these women's stories that they have shared with you through this film. Welcome to the collective movement of reclamation and belonging.
All right, I just want to invite all of the panelists to turn your videos on. Wow, okay. So hello to everybody out there, friends and community members. Some of you know that this is our first ever local screening of this film, and so a lot of you guys are seeing it for the first time. The chat is going off, which is already awesome. But naturally, our team just wants to know how it landed with you. And so maybe if you just take a moment and put a word or two in the chat so we can continue to just be in community with each other tonight. Maybe how the film made you feel, or a way you might describe it to a friend in a word or two. In the meantime, my name is Chelsea Murphy, co-producer and co-director and a character on this film project, Expedition Reclamation. You may know me from my Instagram account, She's Nature, where I advocate for racial equity and inclusion in the outdoors. Maybe you've seen me around town in this community, or out on the trails near Leavenworth with my kiddos. I live here with my family. My daughters, you just saw them in the film. They mean the world to me, and I am currently just on a mission to ensure that the outdoor industry and the culture around it is a more accepting and inclusive space for people that look like us. I am really excited to be moderating this next portion of the event tonight, where we'll bring in the collective voices of the amazing women that you just saw on screen. 8 of them, including myself, were able to come and hang out with us tonight. Before we jump in, I just wanted to say that I do understand not everyone in attendance tonight may be well versed or associated with some of the topics and narratives shared in our film. So just really reiterating the need and the want with this film to call you in to this movement with us of redefining outdoorsy and creating a safe and more conscious outdoor community. I believe the most effective way to do that is to have intentional conversations and to just open it up and create a brave space to communicate the stories and feelings of the people with all different walks of life. And that is definitely our panelists tonight. So with that, I want to bring in some of the characters and the creators of the film to help call you in a bit closer to this space of continual learning and understanding. So if you are someone in the audience that might just want to see one person talking, just so that you stay in speaker view. But if you want to see everybody on the screen, I think you can just switch to gallery view, if that sounds good. Let's see. So as we are in this event tonight, it's an environmental film series, and so I thought we should kick off a question with the panelists and characters that if you maybe haven't figured it out already, you're likely wondering, how does this film tie into environmentalism, right? And so I just want to have Sanj come on because she so eloquently puts this for us, and also she's major part of this film. So maybe introduce yourself and then answer that question.
Sure. Thanks, Chelsea. And thank you guys, first of all, to everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. I have not even yet processed all of the incredible responses in the chat. And it means the world to all of us to bring this film out into the world with this group in particular. So thank you. I am Sanjana. I'm one of the co-directors, co-cinematographers, and co-editors of the film. I work specifically in climate action storytelling, and so this question is super dear to my heart. I think that one of the things that many of our characters touch on, and I'll kind of introduce the idea, and then if any of our characters want to pop in, I would love to hear from you guys as well. But when we think about the environment, environmentalism, conservation, and the climate, we typically see a lot of white narratives that focus more on carbon footprint, focus more on humans as extractive or destructive beings. And I think every single woman in this film has shown that, especially BIPOC cultures, have a really different relationship with nature, have an incredibly reciprocal relationship with nature, and understand themselves to be part of what helps nature thrive. And so I think that one of the most incredible ways that this film ties into environmentalism is in showing that when you think of yourself as part of the land, when you have access to that land, when you understand what reciprocity looks like with that land, especially with the Indigenous folks of the land that you're in, you become a steward inherently. And so that's kind of the ways in which outdoor recreation, access to outdoor recreation, and climate action all connect together. I know many of our characters speak on this as well in the film. So does anyone want to take it from here and kind of elaborate in the ways in which you see this theme coming up? Like Karen, I know you mentioned it at the end of the film for sure.
Goodness, I was trying to think what I would say. I think it's really important. There was actually something that Paige said in her interview about the role of stewardship and recognizing ourselves as stewards. At the time that we were shooting this, I hadn't actually met Paige yet, I don't think. It's hard to remember like when we came into each other's lives and when not, but I think it's really quite resonant, the fact that we both were interested and felt a call to kind of identify the importance of stewardship. Is a humbling reality. And it's just, I said in the thing, it's biology. We will all become dust again. We are all made of stardust. We are made of earth dust. We are made of the waters that, course through this planet and through the particular lands where we were formed. And remembering that and kind of embracing it as an opportunity to reconnect and to sort of be grounded in a different way of being is really important to me, especially now I'm getting ready to build a house and build a little flower farm. And the whole process is both scary, but also it feels quite deeply like a homecoming. And yeah, not sure if I actually answered the question, but thank you.
Yeah, I love the part where you said it's a really humbling experience, and I know for me, I would definitely echo that as well. Just within moving to Leavenworth and becoming more acquainted with outdoor recreation and being able to be in close proximity to nature all the time, it definitely has awakened the activist in me, right? The need to just continue to fight for something that I love so much. And then always tying it back into the idea that environmental justice is racial justice and vice versa, right? That it's very intersectional. And when you're thinking of one thing that you might stand really tall for, it's really likely that it might affect one of these other things, whether that's racial, environmental, justice. They're all very much interconnected. So I love that. So let's see, does anyone else have anything to put towards that? Because I have some other fun questions. I really just want to know, because this is kind of our first time being in community with others and watching the film, I would love to bring on Rebecca and just introduce yourself and the project and your portion of it, and then just talk a little bit about why you wanted to be a part of this project.
Yeah, I can do that. My name is Rebecca. I use she, her pronouns. I'm credited as a co-producer on the film, but I originally started out as a project intern. I was one of the women who responded on Chelsea's Instagram post through She Colors Nature for the call for cast and crew. And I was basically looking for a way to like wrap up my college career and kind of round out my education there. I've been taking a lot of science classes, and I was interested in moving a little bit more towards like the arts. And I was also like, for a long time, I was, I guess, searching for community with people of color with women of color, and just feeling uncertain about how to like go about that. So when this opportunity showed up on Instagram, I jumped at it, and they very kindly included me and offered me this internship on the project. And it's been really lovely to be in community with all of them and work with them. I'm feeling a lot of gratitude towards everyone right now. Yeah, that is about it. Is there anything else you wanted me to cover?
I think that just about covers it. I do want to just take a moment and throw that gratitude back towards you, because this project would not be here today had it not been for having another person just behind the scenes helping us out, and yeah, all of the things that it takes to create a film. I love that. Thanks, Rebecca. I don't know if you're the last person I want to hear that question from, though. Does anybody else want to talk about, as we mentioned before, it was an Instagram call out, right? Like calling all Black, Indigenous women of color who love to engage with the outdoors. It was very broad, and like Erin said earlier, we weren't sure who we were going to get back or if there was anybody out there, right? I know for me, I was just feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm the only one out here in Washington State, and we're gonna get like nobody back. But we got so many, and now in this room, I just feel like close friends with each and every one of you. So it's a pretty cool journey that we've been on together. But does anybody else want to unmute and just talk about why you answered the call to this project?
My story is actually a little different. I didn't see your Instagram post. I heard about it from Randy, Erin's roommate, because Randy is on the steering committee for Team Naturaleza. So she's all about, what this film is trying to cover, which is representation in the outdoors. And, Team Naturaleza is the bilingual part of environmental education here locally. So that's how I got connected with Erin. And then I met you, Chelsea, at the Wild Ideas event at the Land Trust. So that's how I came about it. It wasn't through Instagram, just a little bit different.
Oh, Chelsea, I think you're muted.
Still muted, Chelsea.
Chelsea, you're muted.
Technological foul, sorry. I was just saying, if anybody has questions, make sure you put them in the Q&A box. Sanj, do you want to read out a question and maybe kick it to another panelist?
Yeah, for sure. We've got a couple great questions in here. And the first one from Isaac Day is, what were some of the more unexpected challenges in the making of the film? I would love to hear first on this from Erin, because there were a couple on production car stories that we have. Maybe we want to share one of those. Kaja was also there for that.
Yeah, you might have to help me tell one of those stories. I think, the big obvious kind of hurdle was shooting in the time of COVID. And so we camped a lot, as you saw from some of the behind the scenes photos. We stayed outside, we were socially distanced, we were masked, we kind of created our own little bubbles. And so, but I think that, it being an outdoor film and everything, it worked out pretty well. You saw some of the interviews were pretty cold. You could see everyone's breath because we were outside and not inside at all with other people. But yeah, we had a couple cars getting stuck. I think there was one shoot with Mary and Paige where Paige's truck got stuck way out up the icicle in the snow, and it was getting to be dusk, and we didn't know if we were going to make it back, and we didn't have service. And then another one with Samara, where she was getting ready to leave. She needed to go meet someone after her interview, and she had a little car and got stuck on some backcountry road. And then Sanj, I'll let you pick that up from there, because I then like we were supposed to meet up with someone else within an hour. So I stayed where there was service. I drove to where there was service and was texting like crazy with people. We kind of met people at different points along production, camping. And so there were several times where we were camping in areas with no service and people were supposed to meet us. And it got a little crazy. Yeah, Chelsea, Wanda.
Yeah, I remember Samara's car bottomed out and we had to go drive around looking in another car for rangers, and we found these two incredible female rangers and we were so stoked because we were like, it's an all-female crew and our car got stuck and female rangers are coming to get us out of here, and it was great. It was actually perfect that it was them who helped us out. But yeah, I feel like the other challenge too with the unexpected challenge on the production side was that the film doubled in length. We thought we were going to make a 20-minute film and we wound up making a 47-minute film. And so that was definitely an unexpected challenge, but also way more rewarding. So I think that, yeah, those are a couple of the main things that come to mind. I don't know if anyone has anything else to add. I would love, there's another awesome question in here from Byron, who is asking, what does success look like for the project? And I would love to hear from some of the characters on that. Now that you've been part of this film, what does success look like?
I guess I'll go. So I'll go back to Chelsea and her Instagram calling first, just because that's how I met Chelsea, was through social media. I had been doing a clothing drive for a couple of years, and then she put on this amazing event without like even meeting me to collect donations. Like, so just having that first connection with her when she put out the call for this, it was something that I definitely wanted to be a part of, and just, you know, seeing her drive and just she's so inspirational and does so much for raising awareness, and just a huge advocate that being in community with her was just amazing. But I hope that this film will inspire the young girls to be comfortable in the outdoors, to go out there and try something and not feel pressured to be the best or summit the biggest mountain, but just be out and be in relationship with the land.
I think I'll add that when you were fundraising for the film, from the get-go, it was like they're going to give 5% land to the land back effort in Wenatchee. And I feel like every outdoor film should do that. It should be, I would hope that success would look like where that becomes conventional and traditional and not like something we're lauding about afterwards. Like, oh, that's so cool they did that. It's like, well, of course they did that. They should be doing that. And if you're filming on an outdoor film on native land, they should be something. They should be the land acknowledgement, and then they should be the action or the financial act attached to that, and having that become the norm would be pretty amazing.
And I would like to say that I think it would also be, for me, success looks like literally, and we've said it, I think, a few times, but genuinely and truly, that everyone knows that regardless of your age, regardless of your body type, regardless of your health conditions, I just saw that comment in the chat and I really wanted to call that out, that we belong in nature. Like, nature is home, that nature is a place that can welcome us, that can where we can kind of lean into whatever it is our bodies can do and be fully present to that and enjoy it and savor it. I mean, I'm like the oldest person in this project with these wonderful women, and it was wonderful because they weren't ageist. They were very welcoming. They were very patient. The snow didn't cooperate, so we didn't really get to do the snowshoeing that we had planned for our shoot, but just there was such grace and welcome during the filming process, and sense that I feel like this is a genuine community, and I want to see the vibe of this community become a bit more of the norm generally. Like, that for me is another part of the success, that it's, you know, the outdoor community can still have its bro culture, but the Brogue culture doesn't have to have the whole community, you know. We're gonna make it cede some territory.
That one deserves to be in a quote book somewhere. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate you mic dropping. Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Kaja. I would like to add that there are a lot of biracial women in this film. And one of the things that was mentioned by a friend who kind of had like a little glimpse into this was so often, I mean, especially as biracial women, like we're at the intersectionality of so many different cultures and races and all these different things. And a lot of times, even within that space of whatever we identify as, there's a little bit of not really, I wouldn't say imposter syndrome, but a lack of feeling like you belong. And so I just really am stoked to see, I mean, I may never see this like directly from this film, but just for more young women to claim space and to see themselves in each one of us. And I think one other person said this, but it's really cool to see like how diverse our panel is. And it's just, I mean, on so many different levels. I think that's the first thing I'm really stoked about. The success in that is just claiming that space for themselves is just, it's going to be cool. The next thing I wanted to say was like a lot of my part in it was talking about healing and, you know, the connection to nature and how much we can heal in that. And so I really, really hope that people start to like tap in and see that for themselves and see themselves in it and really find the confidence to tap into the healing spaces or parts of nature. And that it is not just the, you know, the language of bro culture, you know, that's cool and all, that's part of it, but, and we can all like be a part of different aspects of what the outdoor industry looks like right now. But I would love to see it reflect like the other sides of things. You know, we talk about environmentalism, like so many of brown and Black Indigenous cultures like honor nature in such a way that we can connect in such an organic way. And I think really redefining that is going to be really cool. And it might not be like immediate, but you know, that'd be amazing. So
I agree. I love that. Let's see. So I'd love to hear from Paige, because we haven't heard from her yet. So I am just going to open this up and then anyone else can chime in too, because this is such a big part of the film project. It's even in the title. What does the reclamation portion of this film project or the topics that we've been talking about, what does it mean to you?
Well, thank you, Chelsea. I think that as a woman like Samara that is thousands of miles away from my homeland, that reclaiming looks different for me, and finding community looks different for me. And for me, reclamation means telling the stories of my own people and vocalizing that. So like my background, that is a picture in the film. This is actually my great-grandmother on Guam when she was 15 in her home village that is a military base now and is no longer accessible to civilians. And for me, over the last several years of being in these spaces and connecting with women like Chelsea and like Mary, where I can bring these stories in safe places and brave spaces. And there's the jungle here. There's this, she is a part of this landscape. And I think that reclamation is just like seeing that in myself and seeing that in those around me, seeing that in my friend Mary and the work that we're doing with Earth I think that I tend to keep a lot to myself and keep my stories to myself. And so it was just really wonderful in this film that you could hear the quietest of voices that you don't typically hear. And that this was a really impactful experience for me.
I really love that, how you said you can hear even the quietest of voices. As someone who is one of your good friends, I can definitely vouch for that, but your story is so important and definitely is only allowing more space for women who look like us to be bold in their story and to stand behind even the hardships that our ancestors have been through. And so I love that. Does anybody else, Ina, do you want to come on and talk about reclamation, reclaiming your space? As someone who grew up here, let's talk about it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ina Waring Enriquez. I live in Leavenworth, Washington on the Wenatchee Fiscosa lands. Thank you, Chelsea. And thank you, Chelsea, for getting me involved in this project. I was one of the people that responded to Chelsea's Instagram casting call for characters. I had a lot of trepidation when responding to it. I remember seeing it and thinking, yeah, like I fit into the category of brown woman who does things outside, but I don't know if I'm rad enough to be part of a film. I don't know if I'm brown enough to be part of a film. I don't know if I'm eloquent enough to be part of a film like this. And I am so glad that I did put myself out there and that I did join into this beautiful project, and which has rippled into a beautiful community. As somebody that grew up on these lands, and I think that what I was experiencing when coming into this project was feeling that imposter syndrome, and something that I've experienced growing up in Washington as somebody involved in the outdoors. I mean, you saw the little baby picture of my little butt in a garden growing up. That was how I grew up. I grew up as the outdoors as being a huge part of my life and who I was. But I grew up in rural Washington, surrounded by not really very many other people of color. And I remember snowboarding in high school, and I was trying to keep up with my brother's friends. I was trying to keep up with all the older white guys. And I remember feeling like I needed to be at this certain level, that I needed to be faster and that I needed to be better in order to keep up and be a part of that, because I wasn't like them. I was a woman, and I was a woman of color. And I think that a huge part of reclaiming our space in the outdoors is knowing that our experience in the outdoors, and however it is that we find joy and that we find healing in that space, is our way of reclaiming that space as our own, you know, kind of like what Kaja was saying, with that, like, there's like a kind of like colonial idea of how we have to do the outdoors, and you put on your certain gear and you go out and you do it in a certain way. But I think that a huge part of reclamation is realizing that there is no right way to be outside. And I think that that's a really beautiful theme that was woven throughout this gorgeous film.
Yeah, I agree. And with the Reclamation and like just the premiering of the film tonight was so like emotional for me. I couldn't even imagine what it was for Chelsea, Aaron, and everybody that like put this together. But for me, it was because it's being vulnerable and sharing like my histories and, you know, growing up in an area where there's non-Native Americans and like trying to find that space for where do I belong? And yeah, I mean, I cried throughout the whole film. So like even talking about it is tough. And so, you know, it's about understanding like who I am personally and not who somebody thinks I should be or a stereotype or, you know, what I should be doing. And so, you know, my journey of reclamation and reparations is to live in reciprocity with the land and to understand that I have an obligation to take care of it and I have an obligation to my culture and to continue to be proud of who I am and not assimilate. And so many of the talks throughout the film just resonate so deeply, I think with everybody on this that was involved in the film. And that, you know, with me being here and finding out, okay, this is who I am and I can be proud of this, and understanding the assimilation, the forced assimilation, the residential schools and things that were forced upon, you know, family members, and just, you know, eliminating Native Americans, and not working towards those reparations is just still a little mind-boggling that it's not happening. But when people come together and do great things like this, and that Brave Space has donated to IRF, and that IRF is now officially a 501c3 nonprofit. Yeah, Paige. Thanks to all of this, you know, I haven't seen a diverse board representation here. And so we created that. We said, let's just do it then, because it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean it shouldn't exist, but it can. And so we're doing that. And our goal with the land back is so much more than just owning a piece of land and having our name on a piece of paper. So I'm really looking forward to creating those connections and supporting our elders and creating a better future for the next 7 generations.
That's super powerful, Mary. I think of, and I'm not really sure who said it, and I'm probably going to botch the quote, but just the idea that if you don't see a book that you want written, then you just got to go out and write it yourself. And I know that for a lot of us here in our communities, that's exactly what we're doing. You know, we didn't see really rad brown girls in outdoor films, and we created the thing that we wanted to see most. And yeah, it just turns out that it's extremely liberating feeling to be a part of a project like this, and it's much needed and supported from all of our community out there. So that's really been a great thing to know. Sanj or Aaron, do you guys want to read a question from the chat box that you might want to ask a certain panelist?
Here's one from an anonymous attendee. So it says, I want to hear more about gear and how these women access the gear needed for the respective preferred outdoor activities. One of the things I struggle with as a BIPOC human with limited outdoor experience is the clear cost into some outdoor activities. Where would you suggest a human longing to chill in the middle of the forest for a couple of days get started? The amount of information on the internet can be overwhelming. Does anyone want to answer that?
Sure. I mean, what's funny is that with our clip, we weren't very gear heavy, right? We were walking. But in my life, I've, you know, done some scuba diving, I've done skiing, I've done all these other things along the way. And now that my child is coming up and is starting to get into things, I'm realizing, yes, gear is very expensive. When I was scuba diving, my parents helped a lot. And then I borrowed gear over the years. I certainly have borrowed a lot of gear. I think these days, usually in like the fall, at least in Leavenworth, there's like the ski swap, but in a lot of other communities around, around ski country, they will, in late fall, you'll start seeing or hearing about ski swaps that are coming up. They'll sometimes be announced through the schools. They'll be announced through some of the sporting gear stores that happen to be in the town. And then you can always also, if you're on social media, just Google ski swap and your town or your community, and you might actually find. And it's usually more than just ski stuff. You'll get your ice climbing gear, you'll get some boarding gear, you'll get tons of clothing, you'll get so even sometimes summer gear, as people are trying to get rid of their summer gear so that they can then go out and buy their sweet new like winter gear. So like looking for some of those community spaces where folks really care about sharing their gear, selling their gear, and doing so in a way, in an environment where it's, there's kind of like an expectation that you're not just selling crap, that people, they want to make sure the ski swaps stay good and stay reputable. And then for the second part of your question, I would just say, if you are uncomfortable with a compass, stick to maybe some spots that are accessible by car, probably not fully off-road, in case you get stuck, because it can happen, as we heard. If you are good with the compass, trust yourself. Let people know where you're going. Try to bring at least one other person. And even if that other person is just 30 feet away, like if you're anxious about truly being alone, because I still haven't really, that's not true. I camped alone before my daughter was born. I haven't camped alone since. Is that true? No, that's not true either. Because I did go camping alone last summer, but it was like on Orcas Island. So you're never really alone on Orcas Island. Plus they didn't have bears or cougars. So it was sort of like, it's gonna be fine. But if you are in wildlife country, consider bringing someone with you who also wants to have a similar sort of experience, but you'll just have it a little out of each other's reach. But that way you have each other's back, just in case. Those are my thoughts anyways.
One thing that I would share is I moved to Kashmir when I was a freshman in high school. And the first year, my freshman year, I joined the Alpine Club at the high school. And it's led by one of my favorite teachers, biology teacher. I actually majored in biology and really loved just that whole experience. But I wore like fake suede zipper shoes from Payless on a hike up to Stewart Lake. And there was like snow and I just didn't know anything. And that was like my first experience and my feet were suffering. And so I think that what I'm seeing these days is a lot more information sharing, gear sharing. When I got into college, I didn't go backpacking until after I had graduated college. And that's when I bought my first pair of hiking boots. And, I waited until like the Moose Jaw sale, or, it wasn't like I was, fiending for coupons. And, I still have my first down jacket, my first hiking boots, because I'm going to make those things last. I'm going to put duct tape on them and I'm going to like make sure that I get the miles out of them. And so I think that, and I've worn them, Chelsea, on a couple of our hikes together. Actually in the film, I have, I think like clear tape on my jacket, like Scotch tape to patch up my down jacket that I got on a sale. So I think that it's just, gear is not a personality trait. It's a tool that you use to get outside, and however you look, whatever you wear, hopefully your teacher will tell you what kind of shoes to wear on a hike up into an alpine lake. But you know, I was 14 and resilient. So I think that there's a lot of resources out there. And I think especially Elisa, what you're doing is really important as well, with connecting people outside and building that relationship, and just breaking down the aesthetic culture of getting outside.
Yeah, I guess I want to speak specifically to the question where he or she asked about getting outside for a couple days. I would say start with car camping. I'm assuming you have a car, but a tent is probably any kind of shelter. It doesn't have to be light. It can be clunky. It can be from Costco. It's just something to keep the rain and the wind away, and a pad or air mattress, anything you have for guests, and layers of blankets. Those are the three basic things. Bring the food that you eat that's easy to cook outside on a stove when the power goes out. So start simple, start with something that you're comfortable with. When I did my first technical thing, I climbed Mount Baker a couple of years ago, I borrowed all my gear from my neighbor. I was like, I'm not buying any gear until I do this at least once. And I just called all the people I knew. So when you're ready to do something, call your network, find your people, and you know, slowly over the years, build up your arsenal of gear, and you'll know what's essential. And I would say that hiking boots are the one thing that will get you out, and are probably the most important piece of gear that you probably can't fit into somebody else's very easily, or you don't want their smelly feet. So I love hiking gear. Hiking shoes are probably, everything else is secondary. And you can, it doesn't matter what you wear other than that if you're not hiking in the middle of winter. So yeah, pick a warm day.
Yeah, those are all really great tips. I wish I would have known you all when I first tried to go hiking, because it was not pretty. But I survived and I kept going. So that is the thing too. All really great recommendations. For the sake of time, do you think we have a couple more questions? I do just want to kind of put out a broad question, because I think that our film hits on a lot of really great narratives and topics, and we've covered a lot of them in this panel so far. But I just want to invite you guys on as panelists to just, you know, if you have any call to action, or you know, something, a narrative maybe we missed that you might want to talk about, but if it's burning at you that you don't want to get off this call without chatting about, I invite you to unmute and let's talk about it.
Okay, I will talk. I'm going to answer one of the questions that I just saw in the Q&A. It was about the swimming scenes and the braiding of the hair. Swimming was very intentional. For me, water is so much a part of who I am. It's connected to my cultures. My dad's from Jamaica and half Cuban. My mom's from Belize. And I grew up in Southern California in San Diego, by, you know, in a surf town where a lot of times I was one of the only brown, Black mixed kids in the water. And so a lot of my life was just deciding that I belonged there without them asking. Or people, I should say, people always asked why I was there, always, all the time. It's so weird for you to be on the beach. It's so strange. Black people don't like water. Black people drown. And it was weird for me as a kid growing up, because I grew up in space in my home where, you know, I grew up listening to my dad talk about jumping off of cliffs into the ocean, you know, surfing and, you know, climbing trees, and that being such a part of who he is, and both my parents actually, and visiting both countries, and that just being a part of who I am. So I was very intentional about picking that, especially in the wake of talking about, you know, a lot of times Black and brown kids don't have access to water. So I really wanted to have that in there, even though it was October and it was freezing. So that was very intentional. It was exactly what I used to, you know, take space for myself that summer, especially during 2020 during the war, and then also after losing my son. So that was just a huge part of who I am. And so Sanj and Aaron Joy got to be a part of that. The scene with the braids, I really want to talk about too. It was right after we had just arrived at Samada's location that she had chosen for her part of the film. And it was this beautiful moment where we had just camped in this random place in Arlington, and we got there, and I had mentioned to her, I really love your trencitas, which is like her little braids, and I wanted to put some in my hair too, because I didn't have anything in my hair after swimming the night before, which is really funny. I didn't bring anything for my hair. I just was like, I'm just gonna swim, I'm gonna show my natural hair. And I think that part was not intentional. It was just this moment in there where we were connecting over that and starting to talk about like culture and Spanish and Latina cultures. And it was just this really beautiful moment where all of us were like, well, maybe we should all have braids in our hair. And it really set the tone for the day. But I really love that I have my natural hair out in the film, because I think there's so much stigma about like jumping in the water, especially when you have like very curly or very natural texture hair, and what are you going to do with it, and how is it going to look? And you know, so many of the pictures that are depicted are of straight hair or wavy hair, and nothing else. And I really, really wanted to keep it that way. And so that part was intentional. But yeah, that scene, it was really cool to see it in there because it was just back behind the scenes. I didn't even know that I was being filmed in that moment. So that was really funny to see that part of it. But I do agree with you. I'm not sure who asked, but I do agree that there are so many stereotypes being broken in that part of the swimming and the braids and everything. There are no rules. And I really want people to know that. And I really want young women to know that there are no rules. You know, even if you don't see yourself out there and surf or, you know, in these water sports, like you can take up space. You know, I think one of the only actual black surfers, female surfers, is Dominique. I can't even think of the last name at this moment, but Dominique Miller, and she's amazing. And she lives in Hawaii, and she and I have gotten back before, but like, it's such a big deal for people to see people swimming that look like me, that look like Chelsea, that look like everybody, you know, like it's such a big deal, and it takes ownership, and it allows for people to gain access to, you know, classes and learning and all that kind of stuff, but so that we do reduce like drowning rates, and we do allow people to reclaim that space. Like for me, it's like everything to me. So for someone to question why I'm like, swimming is so silly when it's part of my blood, you know? So, you know, yeah, it was unintentional for the braids, but it was very intentional for the swimming. So,
yeah. I love that. Thanks for sharing, Kaja. Yeah, I love your natural hair. It's beautiful. Always let it out. So I think I've got a couple more minutes. There's one question in the chat that I think is super important, and I would just also love to hear it from you guys as well. How has making this film connected us here? And has it, or will it, right? This is our first screening. So has it set ripples within the broader community? And I can say, you know, from my experience, just in short answer, like, I feel more connected with you guys than I do with, you know, so many people that I've lived here in this Leavenworth community for almost 9 years now, you know, where sometimes I walk around town and I feel like I'm invisible. I get on a call with you guys and I just all of a sudden feel so seen. So I will kick it off, but if anybody else wants to follow up with a little bit of talking about this community and, you know, maybe a moment or how you feel connected.
I'll say just one.
Oops, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go, Mary.
It's like, I guess I'm gonna unmute first, but we did it at the same time. I think a major way like that this has connected us is like yeah, just being on the call with everybody. We've done a lot of Zoom just because we're kind of spread out all over, but then having the opportunity to meet people in person is so cool too. And it's like, I know you, I've seen you on the film, and like, it's just cool. But and setting a ripple throughout the community is with the Brave Space media team, setting a new precedence for film making and what they do for the fee for being on the land, that this can be a new way that's done moving forward. And so, you know, there's a lot of community members and organizations that have taken the step to start looking at things in a new way and doing things differently, and, you know, backing the Indigenous Roots and Reparation Foundation. And that, you know, we've had your support from day one, which is so huge. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that, and for creating such a welcoming space for women in the outdoors.
I'll piggyback on what Mary said. I think the pledge to Wenatchee Land Back is actually what inspired an organization that I'm a part of to say, oh, we're going to put 10% of any grant funds we receive to Indigenous programs here in Whatcom County. And so that's something we did. And so if somebody else sees us advertising that that's something you're doing, then maybe some other group will start doing that. And so that is a ripple effect, and we may not even know how large it is. And then secondly, when we're thinking about, talking to a friend about screening in Bellingham, and how maybe if we can find somebody to sponsor and cover the cost, maybe the ticket sales could go to scholarships for BIPOC youth. There's so many outdoor camps here, but they're not cheap. So the organizations are there and the infrastructure is there. And so how can we use this film to, you know, raise funds to do things like that through its screening? And I think that those ideas are something that this community is totally open to embracing. So
And I would just add that it's, in terms of like, so I've lived in the Upper Valley since 2017, but I've often felt kind of like, to your point, Chelsea, a bit invisible. And some of that was by design. You know, I navigate. I mean, I was visible with some of the work I do, but not visible as me, as Karen. And connecting with folks as we were, you know, talking about the film, I think in the fall when we were part of there was a different like communities short film series. And we had some panelists from the other characters who were on that, and had kind of, you know, had some really good sincere conversations about the diversity of our experiences in the outdoors and why telling these stories matter. And after that, I began to, like, people started to see me in town and actually like introduce themselves and be just, I think, a little bit more willing to see me as approachable and accessible. And I appreciated that, because I mean, I'm not going anywhere. I'm literally building my home here. So it's nice to know that this, one of those ripple effects is just being seen as a genuine and committed community member in this space, and building those relationships that way, building neighborly relationships. It's hard to do during the pandemic, but being in this project has helped.
I think one last thing as far as just the ripple effects, I think it's just shown me personally that I can bring the fullness of myself, and I can have relationships where others bring the fullness of themselves. And even though we don't have similar experiences to a T, that we can come together and that our stories are honored. And so I think that, you know, moving forward, like, this is going to be shown at film festivals, at outdoor film festivals, and our 47 minutes of time are going to be honored. And also with these wonderful women, I'm just honored as well to be included.
Okay, so that concludes our panel portion of this. Thank you, everybody, our panelists, for showing up and, of course, being a part of this project. It would not be a full story without each and every one of you. So we appreciate you guys so much. And I am going to let Rebecca come on and tell you a little bit about what you can find on our website and where we're going next.
Yeah, we're gonna start wrapping the evening up. So much gratitude to everyone who made it out tonight, out virtually. Erin is sharing a QR code on the screen. If you haven't used one before, basically what you do is you take your smartphone, if you have one, open up photos, and then just hold it really close to the circle. And it should pop up with a link to the website, bravespaceproject.org, which maybe someone can also drop in the chat. And if you don't have a smartphone, maybe just write on a piece of paper the URL, www.bravespaceproject.org. And that will basically take you to the project's main website, where you can find a schedule of screenings as well as a screening request form. If there's someone, an organization in your community that wants to host a screening, they can just go there and fill that out. There are also like press features and articles that our characters and cast have written, among other things. Oh, and some resources compiled by the cast and crew for further learning related to the film. Also, this weekend, Expedition Reclamation is being screened through No Man's Land 7th Annual Flagship Film Festival in Denver. Very exciting. You can get tickets through the No Man's Land website. Maybe someone can drop that in the chat as well. If you want to attend in Denver in person, if you happen to be near there, Expedition Reclamation will be screening on Saturday of the festival. And then if you want to attend the festival virtually, you can also get tickets for that. And those films will be open to you for like a week-ish, I think, the 7th through the 13th. And Expedition Reclamation will be in program 3. I think that is all. If I haven't missed anything, directors, I will kick it back to Kimbrus.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much. It's been such a wealth of information and beauty and such strong, brave space. I am so honored that you allowed this platform to happen tonight and be with us. I will be sending out a recorded link to the conversation and the intro and the conversation portion, so you can be looking for that. I'll be sending that out to all registration holders, and that'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks as soon as we edit that down. There will also be an evaluation email, so I encourage you to send us some information and suggestions and feedback on these presentations. I will be in touch with Erin and Angela for any other information we want to put out on that follow-up email to everybody. I want to say thank you so much to Chelan Douglas Land Trust for their continued support in making events like this possible. Thank you to the Brave Space team. You are courageously amazing. You beautifully shared your stories and everything about this project. I'm just honored to be with you tonight on this. So thank you for your participation to all of you who came on to the call tonight. I think we probably set a record. It was amazing to see so many people join from multiple countries, multiple states. So thank you so much. Please join us next month for our virtual meeting. Remember that we switched it back to virtual for North American Owls with Paul Bannock. And so we look forward to seeing you first Thursday in April. Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us.